Newsfirst Newsline with Faraz Shaukat Ali.
Good morning, I am Bandura Jayasekara. My good friend and colleague Faraz Shaukat Ali is on vacation. So you are with me on Newsline. I have good news to start with. The wonderful Barbara Sansoni has been honoured. The University of the Visual and Performing Arts awarded Honorary Doctor of Philosophy degree to Kalasuri Barbara Sansoni. We, on behalf of our network, we like to wish her well and congratulate her. And the Island has a full-page article about Barbara Sansoni, but there's so much she has achieved, Barbara's life and achievement at a glance. I'm sorry we have no time to read all this, but we really wish her well. As of course, we will always remember our colleague, her wonderful son, Dominic, who is doing a great job as one of the best photojournalists of this country. We have a very important guest all the way from Canada today. This is Professor Chandra Dharmawardena. Long introduction about Professor Dharmawardena. He's a professor of chemistry and former vice chancellor of Sri Jayawardenepura University. Then now he's currently at the National Research Council of Canada, premier scientific arm of the Canadian government, and he's also a professor of quantum physics at the University of Montreal. He's published a book recently, book on physics, was published by World Scientific, entitled Physicist's View of Matter and Mind, available at Amazon.com. So there's so many things we can talk about Professor Dharmawardena, but we are going to have a discussion. He will try to challenge some myths, and we will continue with this discussion. It will be an interesting thing, I'm sure. Good morning, Chandra.
Good morning.
Now, why are you here in Sri Lanka? You're on vacation or?
Well, partly vacation, but partly I want to visit some of the areas where there is kidney disease going on. Whenever I come here, I try to do that, to look at the field and see what is going on. There's a very increasing epidemic where farmers are dying, and there's a belief that they have got poisoned by agrochemicals and fertilizers, and most of the scientists don't think so, but that is the public opinion, and there's this huge gulf.
How come this public opinion? I mean, this is a person, so public, you don't agree with the public?
No, I think most of the scientists don't agree. There are a handful of scientists who also believe that the agrochemicals cause this problem, and they want to stop agrochemicals, stop weedicides, and go back to traditional agriculture.
Do you think that will work?
Well, most scientists don't think it will work, and I believe it is good to have a bit of that as a niche, and we shouldn't forget that, but we cannot feed. We know that when the English came to this country in 1815, the population of the country was less than what we have in central Colombo, and traditional methods can feed a small number of people, perhaps 1 million people, but it will be very hard to do that.
So you mean to say there is confusion in Sri Lanka on all this?
I think there is a lot of confusion, both among the educated public and among political activists, and they are partly fired by similar activity in the West. It's not only in Sri Lanka, in the West also, very strong politically motivated green movements which think that agrochemicals are being used to such an extent that the whole country's whole environment is polluted. But what I find is that if you take countries which use a large amount of agriculture, advanced countries like New Zealand or small countries like Singapore, which is very advanced, they use hundreds of times of agrochemicals and they don't have any of these diseases. So there's a strong anti-correlation, not a correlation, between agrochemical use and chronic illnesses.
So you mean to say there's nothing wrong in using these agrochemicals?
I believe that if they are used according to the instructions, there are nothing wrong. There's a tendency because of subsidies and all that, to where you tend to put far more agrochemicals than needed, thinking that if you put more agrochemicals you get more yields. That's not true. It's like if the doctor says take 1 tablet, if you take 5 tablets, the disease doesn't, it becomes a toxin.
People die.
People die. That's exactly what's happening. When the free market came, they will try to sell you more fertilizer, so the farmer puts 5 times more phosphate than you need, and so we have lots of phosphate in the soil.
So who is at fault for that? Is it the Minister of Agriculture, or who is at fault for that?
I think there has been a breakdown in the agricultural infrastructure, where at one time everything was handled through the state, through agricultural technicians who distributed the material to the farmers, and they could come back to them. But once it became free market, the merchants are the people.
And I also saw that today in the papers, President Maithripala Sirisena has paid a tribute to late Dudley Senanayake, what he did for agriculture.
That's right. I think in the old days, Mr. Dudley Senanayake, and then also certainly up till I think when the free market came, I think we need some free market, but we should not go to the other extreme. We have to find this middle part between free market and state enterprise.
Yeah, and then to recap this now, what you say, there is a wide gulf between the public opinion and expert opinion.
That's
and
right.
of course we always like the counterpoint. So you could elaborate more on that.
Well, the counterpoint has of course come from the green movement. I mean, originally it is true that when agrochemicals were produced, DDT was produced, people didn't know it was bad, they just sprayed it all over the place.
Yeah.
It killed all the useful insects. We need bees, we need butterflies, we can't kill them. Soil is a living organism. There are microbes, there are earthworms, so we can't kill them. So we can't spray insecticide arbitrarily. So these controls were ignored, and a famous book by Rachel Carson saying Silent Spring, because there were no birds, nothing. So there was this reaction, and I think the pendulum has swung to the other extreme, where people are thinking everything comes from agrochemicals. But, we need the agrochemicals to feed the rapidly growing population. I mean, the world population, there's a world population clock that you can go in Google, and you can see this hand tick, tick, tick. And these ticks are adding populations equal to the size of the whole of Sri Lanka in, one day or one few small period of time. I may not be exact about the time, but it's unbelievable. How can we feed these people? The earth is a limited place with limited resources, and now it's warming up, becoming less resources. I mean, it's very possible that within 25 years, all these distributed areas where people are talking of devolution might be underwater.
So Kamimba, you are an expert, and as an expert you say that use of agrochemicals is safe.
I think it is safe. And in fact, the agrochemical that has been banned, which is called glyphosate, is so extremely safe that you can use it even without gloves, goggles and other things. It's such a very safe, I mean, according to the World Health Organization and the FAO, Food and Agriculture Organization, even if you take about a quarter cup of it every day, full strength, nothing will happen. That is, it's like 60 grams per kilo for a kilogram person. 60 grams is like 12 teaspoons. So it is a very benign material, and that's why the whole world is using it. Every 2 years, because of public agitation by the green movement, which is correct. I mean, we need the agitation. So the agitation makes governments review it. Every 2 years.
But we need correct and proper information.
Exactly. And this is not getting there. Instead, what is being given is that there is a dangerous poison, and it's been banned, and the only country that has banned is Sri Lanka. So this affects the tea estates, our vegetables. Vegetable growth, this is a country, tropical country. Weeds grow so fast. If you don't put it, you are overwhelmed, and then snakes grow in them, these mice grow in them. People can't do it manually. We have a very big shortage of labor, and then vegetable prices go up. On top of that, people go on saying that our rice is polluted, our tea is polluted. Then there are people, enemies of the country outside, who will say they have a don't buy Sri Lankan products movements by various organizations who you can very well guess, who are agitating against Sri Lanka. So there are so many negative things on the country, and we should keep our heads straight.
But it's very interesting now. You are making this point, Chandra, that you say the scientists hold that our main pollutants are diesel and petroleum fuels, sugar and fat in food, and not agrochemicals.
I believe
I'm
so.
sure viewers are keen to know more about it.
Yes.
What are your thoughts?
I believe so, because people have analyzed the Japanese, our Sri Lankan scientists from the geology department, others have analyzed our soil, WHO, and they don't find any toxins. But if you go down our streets, you can see that. I mean, you just have to have a piece of filter paper and go around doing this, and then you can immediately see how much petrochemicals, dust particles collect on this, and people are absorbing this all the time. And on top of that, they are inside cars and getting stressed out. Even stress is a pollutant, because if you get stressed, you get adrenaline formed. The adrenaline will stop your insulin, so you just get diabetes, type 2 diabetes, because you are accumulating sugar and you can't run out of the car and burn it. And without any agrochemicals, without any pollution, just the fact that you are stuck in traffic is enough to make you sick. I mean, these are very important. Cigarettes, everybody knows that cigarettes are carcinogenic, but we allow it to be sold instead of putting the chief executive officers into jail for selling something.
So you want this cigarette company chief executive to be in jail?
Well, I would say.
I mean, does it happen in your country, Canada? No.
No.
Are they in jail?
Well, you see, this is the point. I mean, there is this hypocrisy of governments, but in countries like Canada, they have successfully removed smoking. And
have they? I mean, surely there are cigarettes in Canada, in the
right.
US.
And you will find that it is increasingly difficult to, but this is not so. I mean, when certain countries, France for instance, they think smoking is a cultural right. They think there's a special type of tobacco called gulua. So they smoke that, and there are strong resistance.
But you did notice that in Sri Lanka, the smoking has dropped drastically. Now, all students, they did. The younger generation, they don't.
I think that is a great sign, and this is the way to go. I mean, you don't have to necessarily, take drastic action like putting people in jail. That's merely an euphemism. But the recognition is that we should not only ban tobacco, we should also ban the motor car. That's, I think, the biggest pollutant. And then,
how do you expect us to go about?
No, it would, of course, electrification, public transport. I mean, what do people do? They buy a car, they go and come home, and most of the time the car is parked in front of your house or in your garage. I mean, why are you spending, 33 million or something for one of these expensive cars? And why do you keep it parked most of the time? I mean...
But I'm sure, now you live in Canada, but you know the state of public transport here. Can we go about it? It's like going to war in the morning. People can come with these theories, but...
so we as, scientists, we can say this. So, we don't have any... we are saying this and also emphasizing in this drastic manner, hoping that the people who are at the helm of power will do it. Instead of building highways, build electric trains, and some countries are doing it. Germany, Japan, China is doing it. And that's the way to go. I think we have
a long way to go. I'm sure you would have read in the papers the luxury cars the politicians are using, and while people are going through lots of hardships.
And this is the whole point. But the trouble is that this is lack of education. People go abroad, they see these highways, they see these luxury cars, they say that's what we need. And they have flyovers and all these things. These are enormously expensive, and it's easy to build these highways, but you have to maintain them. 1 kilometer maintenance of a highway could be in, as they grow old, they'll become even more white elephants. So easy to build this, and the Western world is realizing it. They have 4-lane highway. In Los Angeles, they double it to 8-lane highway. Within about a month, it's again chock full of traffic. So there is no solution to this highways. Now in Ottawa, where Bandula knows very well, he was in Canada, he did an excellent job of handling the place, and he would remember in Ottawa all the 4-lane highways, the 2-lane roads, now the government has made them into 1 lane. And the other lane has been made bike paths. Now imagine right now, I checked the weather, it is -10 below freezing. But yet people go on these bicycles. People are realizing that you can get to work faster on the bicycle than in the car.
But I'm sure you know that if we try to cycle in Colombo, you'll be killed by one of those private coaches.
So if you have a dedicated lane for the bicycles.
People will
Take it, and then you the dedicated lane, and there's one lane just for the traffic. So there's one lane to go, one lane to come back, other two lanes are just for bicycles.
I agree with you. I mean, if we can do that, I'm sure more and more people will cycle. I mean, in fact, I was in Netherlands recently, and then one of those people told me she was riding a cycle, and then she looked to her left side, and the Minister of Finance.
The Minister of Finance
was cycling, but can you ever imagine our ministers doing that?
And
they want big vehicles.
Bigger the better, and also two in front for...
Yeah, I mean, I think most of them, they live in their vehicles, like you said. But they are not stuck in traffic like you and I.
Right.
But
and if you go to a place like a railway station in Holland, in front there's a huge bicycle stand, because people come and take the train.
But coming back to this favorite subject, these chemicals. Now you were telling me that there was this thing, people say in Sri Lanka, this Natha, you said it, so that's what all this. What's this?
Well,
I mean, I like your counterpoint.
No, this is true. I mean, in Bangladesh, there is poisoning of people from water which has arsenic, and this was actually done by the NGOs who said, well, this country needs water, we put tube wells and we provide water. They never checked what's coming from deep underground. Deep underground there's arsenic, so the country got poisoned because of this attempt to do good to the people, and so there is arsenic, but and they get kidney disease. So people thought, and instead of saying that this is they instead put power to it, saying God Natha has revealed this in Canada, in California. One lady stated that she has found this information by a revealed fact, and this was used by some members of the Faculty of Science in California who believed that science must not only use empirical methods, but what they claimed were Eastern scientific methods to get truth. So they said, well, this is caused by arsenic. And then,
so because of this Natha Deyu.
Yes, Natha Deyu. And this is very believable to the people, and this is how the counter opinion came into being. But then when the scientists looked for arsenic, they don't find arsenic in adequate quantities in the Rajarata. Then they said, oh yes, it's not only arsenic, but this weedicide known as glyphosate, which joins up with arsenic and goes into the body. Now when you have two things, it's more difficult to get them together, just as it's too hard to meet two people at the same time. So actually this theory makes it even harder for it to be true. But the worst part of it is, there is no glyphosate in the Rajarata, because glyphosate is something which kills weeds. If it is in the water, all the algae will be immediately destroyed. But you just have to go there and look at the waterways, it's full of algae, so there is really none of these things. These are all myths.
But Chandra, people believe it.
That's the point.
People are believing. So as scientists, are you all going out and going to speak to these people? But then you said your own colleagues, the scientists, they also believe in this.
There is a certain fraction of scientists. I would say that the vast majority of scientists, I mean you might say 95% of the scientists or more, do have the mainstream point of view. And in fact very recently, even in the West, 117 Nobel laureates issued a warning to this environmental group known as Greenpeace to not to propagate myths and not to fund research which are pointed in such a way as to produce results they want to produce, to prove that glyphosate is bad, it causes cancer, it causes tumors, and this kind of falsified research. So there is a lot of lobbying going on, and whenever mainstream scientists say that they are doing they support the use of agrochemicals and weedicides, the reaction from the opposite side is, oh yes, these scientists are in the pockets of agricultural chemical companies, they are corrupt scientists, and they say, well, it happened in tobacco. Well, in tobacco, there were industry scientists who were saying it, but the mainstream science, academics, have always known and maintained that tobacco is bad. All the tobacco is bad, the public didn't want to accept it till recently. You would find Churchill smoking a cigar, you will find Marilyn Monroe, Cary Grant, all these famous public image was having a cigarette was cool in the modern language of usage.
People don't think so anymore.
That's how we have to go. But then, very often we don't have time. If we ban agrochemicals, then we lose. A country must attempt to be self-sufficient. You cannot always think of importing your rice, your vegetables from California, everything. To some extent, you may need to import many things, but at least some minimal self-sufficiency should be achieved. And we had achieved self-sufficiency in rice, and this is a tropical country with excellent, much better fertile
Chandra,
land.
don't you think now, there's a perception, you're talking of Natadiyo, there are all these Greenpeace and other movements. Now you as a scientist, you say, no, this is wrong. But don't you think you have failed?
Well, I think
scientists have failed.
Well, scientists have, it took about 3 centuries for people to convince that the earth is not flat. Because when you look at it and you tell these people, look, this is a globe floating around. That looks silly. Why doesn't it fall? Underneath, of course, the classical explanation in the 19th century was underneath there are many hells supporting it. So it doesn't fall, and above there are many heavens. So this is a common belief. Now, of course, how is the earth round and all that? So, there is always a large gulf between public opinion and scientific opinion. And it will continue. Now we have quantum physics, which tells you all kinds of things about particles being able to go through 2 places at once. So this is mind-boggling. But the public understanding of these things are very hard.
Now, Chandra, you're going to address a seminar on 15th of December and you'll be joined by Dr. Sarattam.
That's right.
What's that seminar
The seminar is about kidney disease and agrochemicals, and this, are we closing on to understand the origin of kidney disease and how are we going to combat it? And this is now a number of people are going to talk about it. I think someone from the clinical side will tell us how it's spreading and how bad it is, and so I don't know all the people who are coming.
So, but are you going to counter this argument?
Yes, my position is that this disease has been caused by the fact that there has been a sudden increase in population in the north central province after after malaria was removed, and we put colonists and so on. Just because you put colonists, if you don't put in the infrastructure, they can't handle it. The water table is limited, and people who live near the reservoirs and near the tanks and get clean water, they are safe. But what people think is, majority of scientists think that those who go and drink water from their private little isolated wells in the back of their house, they are the ones who seem to be getting shallow wells. The water is sort of stagnant and not connected with the water table. It doesn't get refreshed.
So you are here for a short while. Are you going to these villages? Are you going to speak to these people? What are your plans?
Tomorrow we are going to a place called
Girandurukote.
And there are 2 other scientists going with me, one very distinguished people. One of them was a Director General of Agriculture some years ago. The other gentleman was a similar director. And so they are prominent scientists. They know quite a lot about this. They have been in the field, but only I come here, rarely. But when I come, I attempt to go and see these people. We want to see if it is also, it's possible that they don't drink enough water, so their body doesn't get flushed of anything that they take. Because if you take bad water, if you and I, who are healthy people, we take bad water, our bodies are capable of flushing it out.
Yes, my final question, Chandra, now before we started the program, you said now here, unlike other countries, why can't we open this tap and drink water? Is it safe or not?
Well, municipalities are supposed to test their water every day for at least once a week, but normally in Canada every day they test it for 90 different substances in the water, and the water should also so that is one thing that checks all these toxins and filters them out. In addition, they put chlorine or something, and at the point of delivery the chlorine should be there to kill bugs. Now but I find that in Colombo, if I drink the water, it has a unusual taste, so maybe It's not. It may still be. It may be safe, but I don't know. But the taste is certainly so unpleasant that people get worried.
Yeah, thank you very much, Chandra, for joining us, and we try to enlighten and give us a counterpoint. And Faraz will be back with you tomorrow, same time.
Thank you very much.